So, what day is it today?
Tuesday?
Wrong. It's NWA Day.
They want NWA? Let's give them NWA.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Attention, everyone. Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
Okay, let's party.
It's the pre-party with J. Cal.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the pre-party, a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. My name is J. Cal, and every Tuesday I come to you bearing gifts of wrestling knowledge and thought-provoking wrestle talk. Even I don't believe that shit. Anyways, hey, this is the pre-party again. My name is J. Cal, and it is Tuesday. And every Tuesday we come on here, whether it be YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, Facebook, and all social media platforms in between to talk pro wrestling. So thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for joining us today. And yeah, it is a Power Tuesday. We're very excited about this week's Power because there's some interesting things that are coming to the NWA. Of course, I think the first thing we need to talk about is one Richard Holliday. I don't have a graphic, so I apologize in advance. But Richard Holliday becoming the NWA Midwest Champion. I think that's something that everyone should be put on notice because Richard Holliday, although has never signed with the WWE or TNA or AEW, is one of the more well-known independent talents out on the circuit these days. I mean, you've got like Matt Cardona, you've got Alexander Hammerstone, and I think you need to put Mr. Holliday on that list. And Richard Holliday has been a delight almost everywhere he goes. I mean, he wrestles for our friends over at the United Wrestling Network. He wrestles with our friends over at Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. And he's had matches in Texas. He's had matches on the independent scene everywhere. MLW, Maple Leaf Pro. The world is this guy's oyster. And he just became the NWA Midwest Champion by defeating Dante Casanova at the Journey 3 event that happened with Exodus Pro this past Saturday. So congratulations to Richard Holliday. He's a guy that a lot of NWA fans kind of thought would be the next big thing for the National Wrestling Alliance. And he is yet to appear on an episode of Power or be on the main roster live events. Like, we haven't seen him compete in the at the Grilled Cheese Festival. He wasn't there. He wasn't at the Riot Fest in Chicago. He hasn't been a part of the events happening in the Northeast. So will we see Richard Holliday show up on NWA Power in 2026? That's a question for you, the chat, to answer. I'd love to hear what your hot take is with Richard Holliday. Number one, why hasn't he ever been signed by the WWE or AEW? Number two, will he appear on Power in 2026? If you think so, leave a comment in the chat to tell me yes or no, or that I'm an idiot. I don't mind if you call me an idiot. I've been called a lot worse. I do got to shout out my boy Sam Retro, who's in the chat. How you doing, brother? We got Steve in the chat. Steve is a big Johnny Robbie fan, and I saw one of Johnny Robbie's rivals this past weekend in Vipress. Vipress took on Priscilla Kelly at GCW, and it was very, very yeesh. It was a tough watch for me. Noobs in the chat. We're doing good, Noob, but it's Tuesdays are some of my favorite days of the week. I get to sleep in a little bit because I work from home. I got to hit the gym, throwing up some big PR numbers. Not really. But, getting stronger every day, every time I go. Excited about the results. I get nice lunch. Got to hang out with my wife for a little bit. That's always fun. Congrats to Holliday. Hell yeah, man. Holliday is getting it done, and the NWA needs a guy like Richard Holliday. I mean, look, let's be honest. They are taking a big, big, big chance with Silas Mason as your world's heavyweight champion. Somebody like Richard Holliday could be a stabilizer for the roster. And who knows, maybe Richard Holliday might be the guy to come in and challenge for that world's heavyweight championship. He's building up the resume. I mean, he's a former MLW heavyweight champion, IWA MLW Caribbean heavyweight champion, IWA Puerto Rico heavyweight champion, MLW tag team champion. This is his first NWA title. So yeah, I mean, big things are coming for the NWA. And if Richard Holliday is a part of what's going to be next for the NWA, I feel like that's a huge get for the National Wrestling Alliance. And the great thing is, it still allows Holliday to keep his options open. I mean, if AEW comes a calling, if WWE comes a calling, if TNA comes calling, we can't count TNA out of this equation. Now that TNA literally has a television deal on AMC, means they're going to be more likely to sign some of the top free agents that are out there. So, and this gives him the option to be seen on a weekly television program, but not locked up into a long-term contract where he has to stay with one particular company. EC3 said it not too long ago that and Matt Cardona is like the perfect example of this. You could still make a really good living in independent wrestling without being signed to WWE or AEW. Wiccan says, it's great seeing Holliday after his cancer diagnosis. Absolutely. I remember the first time I saw him back, he was in the United Wrestling Network Championship Wrestling from Hollywood Ring, and he cut this amazing promo, and it was just top notch. How he was the most marketable, how it's rarefied air and all that stuff. And I'm like, why isn't this guy working anywhere else? But, he was coming off of a cancer diagnosis, and I hope that companies don't look at that as a liability, but maybe they do. Steve G says, isn't Holliday part of MJF's group with Hammerstone? And yeah, he was for a short time. That group has since basically disbanded. MJF went to AEW. Hammerstone was the MLW world champion before leaving the company. And now it's Holliday's been kind of a solo act since then. The Dynasty, that's correct. And then Steve G says, Sam, I think they reunite in AEW. No, I don't think they did reunite in AEW. Hammerstone has not been in AEW. I don't think he ever wrestled in AEW, and I don't think Holliday did either. I could be mistaken. You know what? I can look it up. I have a computer. I can look it up. I'm going to look it up. I have a computer. Sometimes it's a slow computer, but I have a computer. Okay, so Richard Holliday has wrestled 3 matches for AEW. And one of them was technically with Rev Pro in the UK, but he wrestled against Serpentico on a dark match for AEW Dynamite. He wrestled on a Rampage episode, teaming with Alex Price against La Facción Ingobernable. That was terrible. La Facción Ingobernable. Anyways, it was Rush and the Beast Motros. And then wrestled again for the AEW International title in a 7-way scramble back on, February 18th, 2024 in London. And that match also included Orange Cassidy, Cameron Kai, Flash Morgan Webster, Shaw Samuels, Shijiro Erie, Spike Trivet, and of course, Richard Holliday. Serpentico, thank you, Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. We gave you a shout out early in the show, dog. You missed it. We were talking about where Richard Holliday has been working as of late. Since he's still kind of a free agent, he's been wrestling at Dog, at United Wrestling Network, and even NWA Exodus Pro. And the question I asked the audience is, do we think that Richard Holliday will be on the NWA roster, on the NWA Power roster in 2026? I'd love to hear your response, Dog Pro Wrestling. Steve G said, Sam, they haven't yet. I expect them all to come back with MJF when he returns. That's interesting. I mean, look, that could definitely happen. I could definitely see Richard Holliday and Alexander Hammerstone signing to AEW. I just don't know if, when AEW first came through and they were signing a lot of people to work for them, it made a lot of sense to me at the time it made sense to go work for AEW because your options at the time were the WWE or AEW. If you burned any bridges with the WWE, then you were kind of screwed. Now that you have a few more options, and by a few, I mean TNA Wrestling on AMC is certainly going to open up opportunities for some people, right? The WWE is literally on so many different channels now, including Netflix, USA, A&E, the CW, and of course, they're on a lot of platforms now. And then with AAA being on, signing a deal with Fox in Latin America, and now TNA having AMC. I mean, there's so many different options for the WWE talent to be on television, to be showcased. But if you're not in WWE, you have two real options, and that's TNA Wrestling or AEW. And AEW has 2 nights of TV, about 6 hours, 5 hours of television, along with their monthly pay-per-views. So even their options are limited. So a guy like Richard Holliday, I mean, he might not ever end up in AEW. He might not ever end up in TNA Wrestling. And that's why, some of these independents with television, MLW, the NWA, United Wrestling Network, some of these places are such a good spot for talent to be, because it gives them opportunity to be showcased on television. Again, the whole point of TV is to market yourself, to be produced, to be commercialized, for people to see you and kind of connect you to pro wrestling. And, I don't, hey, what's going on, Foxy? Thanks for joining the chat. I don't know when the last time I watched a wrestling show and was like, oh, that wrestler, I don't know who he is. A lot of the talents that I'm watching these days, I've seen elsewhere, and it's kind of you connect with the talent. I don't think in this day and age, at least for me, and maybe I'm the minority here, I don't necessarily look at pro wrestling and say, oh, I'm watching this show because I like this show. I watch wrestling based on who's on the card, right? Like I was at a GCW event earlier this week, and I saw GCW on Saturday. And the big draw for me to go to the GCW event was because it was going to have Rey Horas, Jack Cartwheel. Thank you for following the live. And it also had the Krusty Crew, one of my favorite tag teams right now. And it also had a Starboy Charlie. In fact, I didn't know Starboy Charlie was going to be on the card, and it made it even better for me when he was there. Priscilla Kelly was on the card. I wanted to see Priscilla Kelly wrestle on the independents. And that's what sold me on that show. Oh, thank you for the heart me, guys. Thank you for your dog, and don't say his name. Thanks for the heart me's. And dog, thank you for the popular and is that a holiday tater? That's amazing. Let's see. Oh, thanks for the gingerbread man. Also, don't say his name. And the peanut. Wow. Or corn. Thank you for the corn. That's a sweet nugget of goodness. Thank you for the super popular dog. Appreciate you. Guys are blowing me up. I love it. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful for your gifts. Gifts are not necessary, but they are very much appreciated. Thank you in advance. Noob said Richard Holliday had battled cancer for a long time when I first heard about him. Yeah, he was, and it's unfortunate. It is what it is. He's healthy now, and I would hate to think that would hold him back from getting a bigger deal elsewhere. But crazier things have happened. Real quick, let me move that and do this and that. Yeah, Game Changer Wrestling this weekend. That was quite an event. I've for a long time I've said, "Oh, I love Game Changer because they do so much different styles of wrestling." And then they threw on so many death matches, and I was so turned off. I was like, "Oh man, you got me eating my words." I do look like Kevin Owens. I get that quite a bit. Thanks for noticing, H. You just made my list, H. You're the first name I added to the list today, H. You should feel rewarded. Rewarded? Yeah. You should feel honored is what I'm trying to say. And then Seahawks, it's about time you went live. I was on live with Soto. We were trying to do a joint show earlier, and it didn't work out the way we had wanted it to, so we did the best we could. Yeah. And H, thank you for hanging out in the chat. Let's see. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. John Kirby, thank you for following me. Appreciate that. Thank you for liking the live. Let's see. Noob said, I remember when Natalia Markova wrestled in AEW, and that was the time when AEW Dark and Dark Elevation was a thing. I feel like I miss Dark and Elevation. I love the way that they used to do Dark and Elevation. I saw a lot of my friends get to wrestle for AEW in front of a live audience. I think also a lot of those matches were filmed during the pandemic, but it was cool to see somebody like Danny Limelight wrestle against, John Moxley or Kenny Omega. And that's, to me, that's what's missing from pro wrestling is stuff like that. Now, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood kind of gives you something similar to that. Thank you for the notification, Windows. But I still feel like there is room for that. Hey, what's up, Mitt? What's going on? I feel like there's room for that in the world of pro wrestling, and I would like to see more of it. Noob says, like I said last week, Silas Mason will be on a generational run with the World Heavyweight title. It'll be a great one. Noob, to your mouth, to the wrestling god's ears, I hope you're right. I said this earlier on my live today, and no one was there to hear it, but I don't think it's what will Silas Mason do. I think more of it is what will the NWA allow Silas Mason to do, because we know from talking to Silas Mason, to watching his promos, to seeing him in the ring, that this man is a loose cannon. And he's going to say some shit that's going to piss people off. But I can't wait to see what he does as World's Heavyweight Champion. Of course, he had the big win last week against JAC, his first title defense. We know that his next title defense is scheduled for December 13th when he defends against Tom Latimer. That's been announced as part of the NWA TV tapings in Tampa. We know that he wrestles an opponent at Saul Win. It already happened, but it won't be televised until probably July, till late January. July. I said July. Double D says, do you guys know ad-free shows? I had to defend NWA in their news video today. What happened, Double D? What happened? What happened that made you defend the NWA on the ad-free shows? I don't know. Waiting to hear from you, Double D. Let's see. Priscilla Kelly versus Effie was effing nuts. Priscilla Kelly, and people don't know this, but like she did a lot of stunt type wrestling when she first came into prominence, and did some very questionable spots, things that I'm not going to get into on this show. But I believe, first of all, I don't know how the WWE couldn't make that work. I think Priscilla Kelly is phenomenal. She's a good-looking girl, of course, but she could wrestle, and she has some good matches that I've seen. She had that great match with Thunder Rosa back during the pandemic for the United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live series, and I feel like that match helped her secure the bag with the WWE. I also really enjoyed most of the match she had with Viperous this past weekend at Game Changer Wrestling. When it got to the deathmatch stuff, I was like, oh, I'm out. They put up a plane of glass, and she power bombed Viperous through the glass. And at first I thought, oh, I don't think that's real glass. I think maybe that was plexiglass or something because it didn't look real. And then when Vipers came up and her shoulders were just bloody, I was like, oh shit, man, that was more than I was anticipating. Let's see. Noob said, as for Natalia Markova, I'm going to say her run with the NWA Women's title will be great, especially in 2026. And we all said 4 months, maybe a 6 or 9 month run with the Burke, no more, 1 or 2 years. Yeah, I think that they need to stop doing a year-long run with anybody. It was when you had Nick Aldis trying to reestablish the NWA brand, it made a lot of sense for him to have that title for a long time. But even his first run ended in 2018 at the hands of Cody Rhodes at All In. He didn't even hold the title for an entire calendar year. When he regained the belt, he did hold it through the pandemic and actually up until the time of his departure, I believe in 2022. I guess he lost it before then, but it was relatively early in 22 that he lost the title to Trevor Murdoch. And that really changed things up for the NWA. And, of course, Aldis wasn't around much longer after that. I think he challenged for the title against Matt Cardona, which he was unsuccessful. And then when Cardona got hurt, he was part of that elimination match. But, again, he didn't win that title either. Shortly after that, he was gone. And then we had Tyrus for, most of a year. We had EC3 for most of a year, Tom Latimer for just about a year. I don't think a world champion needs to have a title belt. Thanks for the follow, RevX. I don't think a champion should hold the title for a year. I think, like what Noob just said, 6 to 9 months, I think is a great time. It gives you an opportunity to establish the champion. And, of course, in my opinion, most title belts do more for the wrestler than the wrestler does for the title belt, right? So, like, when Nick Aldis won the NWA World title, at that time, the NWA World title needed somebody like Nick Aldis as champion. It needed someone to raise the level of the title. I feel like when Tyrus won the title, he kind of hurt the credibility of the world title. You know what I'm saying? Do you guys follow what I'm putting down here? That's funny, Double D. That's funny. But it was one of those deals where, like, the champion should benefit from the title, and the really solid champions should be the ones to elevate the title. And when it comes to Markova, that title, the women's title in the NWA, I don't think could be at a higher pitch point than it is right now. Markova has some big shoes to fill with Kenzie Page, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what's going to happen. Hey, Executioner, thank you for the rose. I appreciate that. No, I'm not Kevin Owens. Yes, I think I look like. Let me say that differently. Yes, I know people think I look like Kevin Owens. I promise you I'm not Kevin Owens. My name is Jay Cal from the Alliance blog. I talk pro wrestling with you, the wrestling community of social media. So thank you. All right, let me get some Monster. All right. Steve G says, it's hard to believe no promotion has picked up Vipers, Vivian Van, Johnny Robbie, Jasmine Allure, etc. Viva Van, I think, is working with AEW, if I'm not mistaken. I think she's, if she's not signed, I know she does a lot of work with AEW. In terms of Johnny Robbie, I don't get it, man. She's extremely talented. So is Viva Van. Don't get me wrong. Viva Van is very, very talented, and she's making the most of the opportunities. Yeah, that's what I thought. Epic Pro Wrestling just pointed out on TikTok that Viva Van is signed to AEW. I think she's made the best of the opportunities that have been presented to her, but I'd like to see her get more opportunities. As far as Johnny Robbie, like, Johnny Robbie's solid. I don't get that either. Johnny Robbie's actually worked for our friends over at Epic Pro Wrestling, and she's great. I can watch me some Johnny Robbie matches. Johnny Robbie and Vipers, to me, very different wrestlers. Very different wrestlers, but very talented wrestlers. And Epic Pro Wrestling is giving me the old sign to shh, so I'm going to stop talking about that. But yeah, anyways, with women's wrestling, it's always difficult. What's crazy to me is that there's an entire promotion women of wrestling that struggles with it makes its wrestlers, right? It makes its own talent. But somebody like Priscilla Kelly, somebody I feel like WOW would be smart if they picked up on some of these women wrestlers who are released from the WWE. Maybe they don't want to pay them as much. I don't know. But I feel like I feel like Priscilla Kelly would be a slam dunk for WOW. I mean, she has everything that you need to be successful in a promotion like WOW. My 2 cents. And Epic Pro Wrestling, I hear you. I see you. I will say no more. Let's see. GCW worked with all the guys that I saw at the live show 2 weeks ago on their show last month, so I've been watching a lot of GCW lately. Thanks, Epic. Son of a bitch. Yeah, GCW, again, I'm not a huge GCW fan. What I love about GCW is that it gives you options. It is literally a buffet of pro wrestling. You get everything at a GCW show. Starboy Charlie is someone that actually Epic Pro Wrestling smartened me up to. I like Starboy Charlie quite a bit. They used the Krusty Crew this past weekend. I love Dom Kubrick and Lucas Riley. I think they're a phenomenal tag team. Yeah, Starboy rocks. He's so good. And Epic Pro, weren't you telling me that he has his family has a boxing background? Because he doesn't do any boxing in the ring. He's just he does. Thank you for the follow, JR Quinn. He does a lot of aerial wrestling, which I feel very much like Starboy Charlie would be great in a lucha libre environment. I don't know if anyone's ever invited him to the Crash, but he would be perfect for the Crash, I think, at least in my opinion. But again, I won't tell you that GCW is my favorite, but I do enjoy going to their shows. But I don't like death matches. I'm not a deathmatch guy. Deathmatch wrestling kind of is not my bag. So when I see it, it's like, oh, I don't like that. Yeah, AEW and GCW is ECW of this generation. I feel like for sure GCW is the ECW of this generation. I feel like they have to be. But AEW, I feel like AEW is its own thing, man, because it blends such a dichotomy of wrestling. It's everything. It's AEW is everything where WWE is sports entertainment. And then you got the NWA, which is like sweaty, meaty men slapping meat. And I'm fine with that. Let's see. Wiccan says, was watching TNA. I know who the Andersons are, but who is Bear Bronson if you know J. Cal? I think Chris already answered it in the chat, but Bear Bronson was formerly in AEW. Yeah, and I've seen him in a few other places. I think mostly in the Carolinas. Big burly guy. I don't think he did anything with the NWA, at least not in a regular capacity. Double D said Dom was shitting on Power and how they haven't had anything in a long while. I said they're on Roku now. They have homegrown Thrillbilly as world champion, a new on-screen GM. NWA is good right now. Yeah, I mean, look, hey, take it easy, Epic Pro. Thanks for the shout out. I'll say this, man. Some people are gonna just hate on the NWA because they're gonna hate on the NWA. What I noticed from watching or listening to Busted Open on Sirius XM, they used to talk so fondly about the NWA when Nick Aldis was involved, and as soon as Nick Aldis left, they kind of quit talking about it, right? And once Nick Aldis left to go be the general manager of SmackDown, when Billy comes on, they'll talk a little bit about the NWA. When Natty Neidhart does her segment on Thursdays, they'll in passing talk about the NWA, but they never really give any credit to what the National Wrestling Alliance is doing. And I mean, just as fans, we can look back in this last year alone, what they did at in Long Island. They sold out that building. It looked great. For the NWA, that was a sellout, and that was huge. What they did at the ECW arena, again, looked great. You know who else runs the ECW arena? AEW runs the ECW arena. NXT runs the ECW arena. NWA runs the ECW arena. The NWA is running center stage. So does NXT. I mean, they are trying to compete with the big guys. And I don't know if they are genuinely on that level yet, but it's not from a lack of trying. And the wrestling is there. I've said this ever since I have been talking about the NWA and Power. That talent is good. There's good talent in the NWA. It's just sometimes they're not showcased the best. And I think a lot of people are aware of that. And it sucks that, as fans, we have to defend it. But, at the same time, that's awesome that you did that, Double D. So I celebrate you for that. Have Natalia Markova go on a small generational run, defend the world title against Natalia Markova for the NWA Women's title, or someone else from the WWE or TNA or AEW. Look, I don't want to say you keep going back to Natty Neidhart because they did that already, right? They did Natty Neidhart with Kenzie Page. And if you listen to Natty Neidhart, she puts over Kenzie Page all the time. And you know who else puts over Kenzie Page? Chelsea Green. And I feel like those two ladies putting over Kenzie Page as much as they have, I don't think it'll be a long time before you see Kenzie Page join up in the NXT program with the WWE. Hey, what's up, Toddy? How you doing, brother? Toddy from Australia. We know the same people. Well, I mean, you actually know them. I just watched them on TV, but Shane Haste, my guy. Shane Haste, Mikey Nichols, Jonah. Yeah, I call him Jonah, not Bronson Reed. He's Jonah. Jonah challenged for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah, I'm good, man. Tuesdays are my favorite days of the week. I always have such a good time on Tuesdays. I go, yeah, Joe DeRock. See, because Toddy gets it, man. He challenged Nick Aldis for that world title. Why can't we get a Nick Aldis versus Bronson Reed match on SmackDown? Let's go. All right, sorry. We'll get back to the NWA. With Markova, I feel like it would be great to see her go on a run. And especially with Markova, I was just talking about, wow, she would be a perfect candidate to take the title to Women of Wrestling. Although I don't foresee that happening. Man, how awesome would that be? I think Markova could take the NWA women's title in a different direction. We did see, Joe Hendry says, hey, Kevin Owens. Well, I'm not Kevin Owens. I don't really think you're Joe Hendry. How about that? But yeah, I could see Markova taking that title elsewhere. The other interesting thing to think about, and I don't know how likely this is, but with AMC putting TNA Wrestling on their channel, I really feel like there's an opportunity for other people to start working with TNA besides the WWE. And when you look at the growth of TNA Wrestling, there's a lot of new talents on that roster. But you know what happens is when these talents get too big, somebody like, Jordan Grace or Joe Hendry, they get signed to the WWE. And if I was TNA Wrestling, man, I would be fostering a relationship with the NWA. Think about it. If you're TNA Wrestling, right, you have basically what TNA does is a good job of discovering unknown talents. They have a lot of talents who have been built up under the TNA banner. Like Steve Macklin, yeah, he worked for NXT, but he really got most of his exposure in TNA Wrestling. Going back 100 years ago, like Frankie Kazarian and Samoa Joe, both of them got their big exposure with TNA Wrestling. Sure, Joe had his ROH stuff, but working for TNA was another level for him. Same thing with Frankie Kazarian. Same thing with Christopher Daniels and, AJ Styles. Like, yeah, these guys worked other places, but TNA became a showcase for them. And I feel like that's what's going to continue to happen for TNA Wrestling. They brought the Hardys in, and the Hardys are getting all this great publicity. And Kazarian's the world champion, and Mike Santana is kind of like, Santana's been everywhere too. He's worked for AEW and he's worked for TNA Wrestling, and they're getting ready to put a very compelling story together for him in the pursuit of that TNA championship another time. I think this would be a great time to see TNA foster a working relationship with somebody like the NWA, because they're going to start to need to fill these holes when the talent gets elevated to the next step, whether it be heading to AEW for the big payday, heading to the WWE for more exposure. You know, working with the NWA would be a solid idea. And you have a wealth of talent. I'm talking just in the women's division alone. You've got Natalia Markova, you've got Kenzie Page and Kylie Page, you've got shut up, Michael. You've got Hollywood Haley Jay showed up again. You've got Tiffany Nieves. All of these are fundamentally talented women and would be great additions to any roster. And you could have a pipeline directly from the NWA to TNA wrestling. And I think that'd be a smart move for everyone involved. Will they? I don't know, but I think it'd be a smart move. Double D says, Natty Neihart has the Heart Dojo right now with Maxine Dupree under her. Imagine adding the tag team of the Page sisters. Devin, that's brilliant, brother. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. That would be an excellent. Now, look, the thing is, if you bring in Kenzie Page and Kylie Page as they are now, they are not the biggest wrestlers, right? So it would definitely, if you brought them into the WWE, they would definitely need to be under like Natty's supervision. But like, I don't think you bring them into main roster on Raw or SmackDown. I think they definitely need to be a part of the farm system, whether it be going through the LFG deal on A&E or going into NXT, whatever it is. I do feel like there is an opportunity for them to grow outside of the NWA. Personally, I would love to see them stick around in the NWA a little bit longer, but we'll see. You know, look, anytime a talent gets an opportunity to grow, I think they need to take it. The NWA needs to have Natalia Markova defend the Burke against NXT superstar Lola Vice. That match would be fire. David Valentine, I do not disagree. I feel like Lola Vice and Markova would tear their freaking house down. I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's where I could totally see NWA and TNA having a working relationship and pipelining talent up and down. I don't see that same set of circumstances with the NXT program. Maybe I'm delusional, but they have other, like, if you're the WWE, you currently have AAA where you could send your talent to grow and learn a new style of wrestling, learn a new way to get over in wrestling. You have access to sending your talent to TNA wrestling, which it's a very similar concept to NXT, but it's also different. Gives your talent an opportunity to showcase themselves in a different environment, trying to get over. And likewise, you know, even Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan has been home to some WWE talent. So that's not unheard of for them to send some people like Omos, or like Charlie Dempsey to Pro Wrestling Noah. But there is not that direct pipeline to the NXT and the NWA. I wouldn't be upset if there was. I know a lot of our NWA fans would be pissed, but I don't think it's a problem. The chat on TikTok just keeps calling me Kevin Owens. John Kirby, hey, Kevin Owens. The Undertaker, hey, Kevin Owens. Michael, Kevin Owens, stick to wrestling. Pig Nose, hey, man, did you know John Cena's retiring? Yeah. It's going to be a sad day in pro wrestling when he does. Sam Retro says Slamovich versus Markova. Now, that would be intense. That would be pretty awesome. I don't think we're going to see a lot of Slamovich in the NWA. And maybe. Look, Slamovich got into some hot water. And we won't get into all the details of that. I mean, you could look it up on the internet. We haven't seen her in a lot of TNA wrestling lately. But, I mean, anything could happen. And then Noob says, no one will remember Santana and Ortiz run in AEW. It was not good. And then Double D says, disagree, Noob. Santana and Ortiz were part of the Inner Circle during AEW's hottest era. And Double D says, dude, the Undertaker's talking to you. We're in the wrong chat. I don't think it's that Undertaker, Double D. I just, for some reason, I don't think it's the Hellfire and Brimstone, you know? Johnny Augustino says, speaking of dad, I heard from today from Ringside News, John Cena's WWE contract, new deal. Yeah, I heard he signed an ambassador deal. And I think that's smart business. Like, of course, you still want John Cena around, even if he's not participating in the ring anymore. I just thought you and John Cena were really close. Word life, Mia. This is basic thugonomics. But yeah, I don't foresee John Cena. Like, look, if you lock up John Cena under like a ambassador deal, if he gets the itch, if the storyline makes sense, who knows? Maybe he might be back for WrestleMania. Never say never. Double D, I can't say what you said, but Retro, when did she get released? Because I just saw her on the website like not too long ago. Hey, Ben, what's going on? Happy Tuesday. Hope you're having a good one. I'm going to go to the TNA roster page right now. Sorry, guys. I was very happy for Li Ying Li to win the Women's Knockouts Championship. That was pretty cool. She's such a passionate competitor. I'm glad that she had that opportunity to not only win the title, but to be a part of, a big night for TNA wrestling. So I don't see Masha Slamovich on the artwork anymore. So maybe they did take her down. Ben, you haven't watched it since September 30th. You've missed quite a bit. The new NWA World Champion is the Thrillbilly Silas Mason. That's the biggest thing. Mike Mondo is your NWA National Champion. Your NWA Women's World Champion is Natalia Markova. The Tag Team Champions are the Immortals. And the National the TV Champion is Brian Idol. The women's TV Champion is Tiffany Nieves. Oh, yeah, you're right. She's gone. Dave Scooby brings up the fact that WWE also has Evolve, which is on Tubi. So, yeah, I totally forgot about that. So, if you're in the WWE, look, man, woo, you've got Legends and Legends and Futures Greats on A&E Biography. You've got Evolve on Tubi. You've got NXT on the CW. Then you've got SmackDown on USA. You've got Raw on DirecTV on Netflix. Then Latin America recently signed the Fox Latin America recently signed AAA. And then you got ESPN for your PLEs and your Saturday night main event on Peacock. Damn. And then on top of all of that, they also have the with TNA signing with AMC, you'll see NXT talents on that channel. And then, like Ben also pointed out, WWE ID as well. A lot of those ID talents wrestling on the independents, Game Changer Wrestling, and those, each various outlet has those wrestlers in those matches. So yeah, it's quite a bit. Markova is a badass with a great ass. I would love to see Markova take on Asuka. I can never say her name correctly the first time. I have to say it twice. Asuka. Yeah, I think Asuka is probably the baddest woman on the planet. I like watching her work. She's pretty freaking good. I'd like to see Asuka and Natty go at it too. The Undertaker says that the masked mystery man is Little Jimmy. And then Joey says, you seen all my comments? Yeah, the Ring of Honor's Women's World Television Champion, Red Violet, she beat Mercedes Moné. Yeah, and that's pretty cool. I mean, look, Mercedes Moné's run as the Women's World Champion, not Women's World Champion, but the Women's Title Collector. I think it's kind of ran its course. I don't know how much more mileage you can get out of it. And I feel like the best way to do that now is for her to lose those belts. If the idea is at some point for her to win the AEW Women's World Championship and have that carry some significance, she needs to lose the other titles. Asuka. You know, Double D, when you're a kid and you're reading a book and you don't know how to say a word and you say it and you're wrong, but you try, I feel like I should get credit for trying, Double D. I feel like I should get credit for trying. I should get credit for trying. Blake says I'm Kevin Owens' stunt double. I'm a Viking, said Kevin Owens. Yes, Viking, I am Kevin Owens. So I want to just real quick, this is specifically for the TikTok crowd. I want you to look at the camera, and I get it. On YouTube, the angle is a little bit wider, but if you look what's behind me, you could see an NWA World's Heavyweight title belt, NWA British Commonwealth Championship. You can't really see it, but this is the TV title here. You could see Ric Flair and another Ric Flair here, a Bumblebee G.I. Joe Transformer, Dubby, some lucha masks. You see all of that. And you're like, that's Kevin Owens. That is Kevin Owens. That is Kevin. Why would Kevin Owens be behind an Alliance banner? Why would Kevin Owens be wearing an Alliance Wrestling shirt? You know what? You keep giving me credit, Double D. You keep giving me credit. Okay? Give a cookie, get a cookie, Double D. Give a cookie, get a cookie, Double D. You know I ran out of stuff to say when I start just saying random shit. I'll believe The Undertaker. I believe anything The Undertaker tells us. Back in the day, there used to be a toll-free wrestling hotline number. And my buddy would tell people at school that he heard it from The Undertaker. And when stuff that he was saying was correct, as he was gossiping about pro wrestling, and he was right, people really did start to believe he knew The Undertaker because he knew the information. Anyway, tonight is POWERRR on Roku Sports. You can watch live at 5 p.m. Eastern. 5 p.m. Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific. No, I said that all backwards. 5 p.m. Eastern, and again at 11 p.m. Eastern on the Roku app. Or is it 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Eastern and 11 p.m. Eastern on the Roku app. You can find out that Natalia Markova has her first scheduled title defense against Max the Impaler. Now, I got to be honest, I thought Max the Impaler was already done and gone before this round of television tapings that took place in Tampa. Apparently, I was wrong. So, Max the Impaler will have their last match with the NWA as she challenges Natalia Markova for the Burke. Spoiler alert, Markova is still champion. And then secondly, we see the return of the Rewind Society, who we only happen to see when they're in Tampa, which is a shame because they're a fun tag team. But the Rewind Society will take on Carson, Drake, and Lockjaw Drake with Aron Stevens in their corner. That'll be an interesting match. We don't know a lot about Lockjaw except for that he has the opposite of a glass jaw. And if you punch him, you will hurt your hand. Then we will also see KFW's very own Hunter, the fiance of Kenzie Page, taking on Cazana of the Country Gentlemen with NWA President Col Cazana in his corner. Plus, we'll hear more from Colby Corino and his inspiring story after his life-threatening injury. So it'll be a very interesting episode of this week's POWERRR. Again, 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. Eastern, or 5 p.m., 8 p.m. on the West Coast. And if you're in the middle of the country, you get in where you fit. We spent the early part of the show talking about Richard Holliday becoming the NWA Pro Exodus Champion, which is AKA the NWA Midwest Champion. And then this weekend is a pretty big weekend for the NWA as well. There's some live events that are going to be taking place. We've got they're doing the double. Hard for me to talk. We're doing a double TV taping on Saturday, December 13th in Tampa. They did announce that Silas Mason will be defending the 10 pounds of gold against former champion Tom Latimer. They also expect to see in action Natalia Markova defending her title, Brian Idol defending the NWA TV title, the Holy Grail of EC3 and Pretty Boy Smooth, the Slime Balls, the Page Sisters, Carson, 𝙍𝙒𝙼 Drake. Wow, Ben, thank you so much for the gifts. Wow, that's so kind of you. Thank you so much. The tag team of Knox and Murdoch. Tiffany Nieves should be defending her TV title. The Immortals will be defending the tag titles. Mondo will be defending his national title. The U.S. Tag Champions Morton and Taylor and more, which means we'll see more stuff happening. And then, yeah, Joey, I did know that Mercedes Moné has 11 titles. I don't think Moné will have those titles when she wins the AEW Women's World Championship. I just don't see that happening. Soto says, let's go to Mexico City next weekend to see AAA. I can't do it. I cannot make it to Mexico City. I wish I could. I wish I could go to Mexico City because that card looks fire for AAA, but I can't make it, Soto. And, you know, I'd love to go to Mexico City. I went to Mexico City back in 2023, the World is a Vampire tour. I got to hang out with Mecha Wolf and Kerry Morton and Rocky Romero. Jackson Storm says, what if the mystery man on Raw was Jake Paul? That would be such a disappointment to me. That would be so disappointing. Let's see. Drake Daniels. Sorry, guys. My phone blew up. What's going on here? Sorry, guys. I am technically still at work. All right. You have my full attention now. What's up, KO? How you doing? You look like Kevin Owens. KO, I get that a lot, fellas. I get that a lot. Patrick Moore says, I know this is an NWA chat, but there's something that I'm not understanding about United Wrestling Network's dynamic with Memphis Wrestling and Gotham Wrestling. Should I expect the United Wrestling Championships to be defended in Memphis? The short answer is no. Patrick Moore, no. Memphis is a co-owned product that features, let me say this differently. Memphis Wrestling is a co-op between David Marquez and all of a sudden I forgot his name. The owner, Marie and Dustin Starr. Marie and Dustin Starr and Dave Marquez are partners in Memphis Wrestling. But Memphis Wrestling kind of does. Thanks for the follow. And Ben, thank you for the roses. You're so generous, and I appreciate that. So Memphis Wrestling is kind of in and of to itself. And Dustin promotes the show. The show is financed through the partnership between Dave Marquez and the Stars. And so they work together to produce this event. They work together to have these shows, but it's Dustin Starr's product. It is United Wrestling Network in name only. The only time I've seen United Wrestling Network stars in Memphis were like Zicky Dice. I don't even think they even brought in Danny Limelight when he was world champion. And I can't tell you specifically why they don't book the champions. It's just, it doesn't happen. Now, when there was Derby City Wrestling that was happening in where's Derby? In Kentucky, they happened to work together. You know, they would have some of the stars from Memphis and some of the stars from Hollywood and stars who were local to Kentucky kind of compete in that area. It just didn't always work out that way. But as Memphis continues on what it's doing now, it's using basically just talent based in Memphis and the surrounding areas. And sometimes you'll see Memphis talent, like, sorry, I got lost in my thoughts there. You will see Memphis use some of their own guys. Like Memphis used the NWA talents. They brought in Camille when she was world champion. They brought in Mickey James. They've brought in other talents from other wrestling promotions. I mean, they routinely used to bring in Brian Cage and Joey Janela, and they've brought in talents like Marco Stunt. I believe Marco Stunt's part of the roster now. So I hear you, but it's also like it just kind of is what it is. I would like them to bring in the United Wrestling Network champions, but they're not going to. And that's okay. It's the United Wrestling Network's okay with it. I'm okay with it. We know that Gotham is using the United Wrestling Network champions, and I think that's pretty cool. Willie, I'm sorry to hear that you're in the hospital, man. I hope you're doing okay. Getting back to where were we? They booked Danny Limelight, but he didn't defend the title. And see, I wouldn't be surprised if Danny flew himself out there to Memphis. Ben asked me, and Foxy, thanks for monitoring the chat. I think I'm going to make you a moderator. If you don't want to be, you can change it later. How do I make you? I'll figure it out later. But Foxy, you're my unofficial moderator for today. And Ben, thank you so much for the gifts, man. I really do appreciate that. Ben asks, how do you feel if the WWE bought the NWA? As a traditionalist, I don't like it, right? Because I like the NWA. I wanted the NWA to be its own thing. The hopes and dreams were that the National Wrestling Alliance would continue to grow and expand and potentially, I don't think they would ever rival the WWE, but I would like to see the NWA become maybe a fourth or fifth brand when we talk about the national scope of pro wrestling, right? Because look, and I know a lot of people in our NWA chat, they don't care for the WWE, and that's cool. I'm not asking them to, but WWE is here, right? WWE is top. Everyone else is fighting for second place. You've got AEW, who's really, almost there as at number 2, and maybe a solid number 2. And then you've got TNA. I'm getting all mixed up. AEW is your probably number 2 right now, with TNA Wrestling coming in hot at number 3, maybe even starting to get close to challenging for that number 2 spot. It really will depend on how good the ratings are and how quickly they can grow on AMC before we can really determine where they're at and the stature of things. But there are a lot of wrestling promotions in the United States besides those 3. And we're talking with a national presence. We've been talking about the United Wrestling Network. They have shows that are filming in both California and New York. And if those shows, in California, we have Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. United Wrestling Network is also recording a program for a New York market, Gotham Wrestling. So we'll see what happens with that. Until it actually comes to full serve, it is what it is. We have Coastal Championship Wrestling in Florida that is doing a weekly TV show starting tonight. They're actually filming in Florida. And CCW has run all across the country. A lot of people consider that the last true territory show. They are running quite frequently. You have MLW, who was on Vice for a little bit, and now MLW is back on YouTube, but that doesn't mean that they're not still putting out quality product. And then you've got, there's a lot of other promotions out there that are trying to get TV, trying to get to that next level. So the hope is that at some point the NWA gets to distinguish themselves from the top 4 or 5, and supersedes everyone else. That, as a fan of the NWA, someone who's been a lifelong fan of the National Wrestling Alliance, someone who's spent the last 18 years talking about the NWA, that's what I would like to see. Ant says, I know you hear this a lot, but I thought you were Kevin Owens. I get it a lot. I totally get it a lot, and that's okay. But what happens to the NWA? I mean, I don't know. If the WWE were to buy it and treat it with respect and dignity, like, I don't think I would hate that, right? Like, if the WWE bought the NWA, because Triple H is a big fan of the NWA brand. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but, if you look at who's running the WWE right now, there are a lot of former NWA champions behind the scenes. Steve Corino, Scrap Iron Adam Pearce, Abyss, AJ Styles was a former world champion. Cody Rhodes is a former world champion. Nick Aldis, former world champion. That's 6 NWA world champions that are currently working for the WWE and for Triple H. And if you have ever seen Triple H's office, he has a 10 pounds of gold, not a replica. No, not something like this. He's got the legit real deal in his office. The title that Ric Flair held. And the title that was on TNA Wrestling, Adam Pearce owns that one. So there is a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings for the National Wrestling Alliance and what it used to be. If Triple H were to buy the NWA and perhaps maybe rebrand NXT as the NWA, I think I would love that, actually. I mean, maybe not, but I think it would be pretty cool. With all that being said, I do hope they remain independent. I do hope they remain their own vessel, and I would like to see the NWA grow in that aspect as a promotion. I think it would be a lot more fun to see what the NWA can do as an independent than it would be as a subsidiary of the AEW or WWE or TNA or whatever wrestling promotion. Billy Corgan is definitely somebody who likes to go against the grain. He did his entire music career, and he currently is doing it with pro wrestling. They are on Roku. They are on YouTube. They are available to watch. New matches go on YouTube every Monday, where they do kind of a recap plus full matches. And then when you look at what they do on Roku, again, that's not live, but new content every Tuesday, 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. Eastern on the Roku Sports app, or on demand anytime on Roku. Yeah, Triple H is a huge fan of the NWA. It's true. Let's see. Patrick Moore says, who'd be responsible for travel expenses for say, Flair when he was traveling as NWA champion? Look, I know Jim Crockett Promotions kind of took care of Flair when it came to his travel. I know that he flew on the Crockett private jet. But I still believe that the talent kind of took care of their own travel expenses. Back in the day, that's how it was. But there was also a lot of upside too. Like, talents were paid on the gate. So a guy like Ric Flair comes to town, they're going to sell out. He brings that 10 pounds of gold or the big gold or whatever NWA World Championship he brings to that territory. They're going to sell out. So for Flair, like, that was never an issue. But a lot of the other promotions, like, it was difficult to keep, for some of the other guys, it might not be such a great payday, but Flair was always well taken care of. And then Sam says that's said that Flair paid for his jets out of pocket. I mean, that could be true too. But I know as part of Crockett Promotions, Crockett had a private jet that Flair was flying on. That's how he could make those 310 days a year. Yeah, Triple H is a huge fan of the NWA. Willie, let me read your joke. I didn't see it. Willie, if you could repost your joke, I'd love it. I will read it. I will. Retro says, hell no to the WWE buying the NWA. I mean, look, man, if we're being pragmatic about it, right? We're being pragmatic about it. We're just thinking about it without our emotion, just our heads, not our heart. If the WWE were to buy the NWA, here's two things that would happen. Okay. I guess I don't know what would happen, but if you can guarantee me these two things, I probably would be all right with it. And as one, Taylor, thanks for the follow. The first thing is, if the WWE would replace the NXT name with the NWA name, I would be pretty comfortable with that. I'd be pretty happy about that. They're already using a lot of Dusty's ideas for NXT anyways. So I think that would be kind of cool. And the second part is, if maybe they replace the NXT title with the 10 pounds of gold. I think that would be kind of cool. And the last thing is, if that they would always treat the NWA with, honor, dignity, respect, because the National Wrestling Alliance is the oldest wrestling sanctioning body in the United States. Always has been, always will be. The only wrestling promotion that's been around longer is CMLL. They've been around since, I believe, like the early 1900s. I think they just celebrated 90 years as a wrestling organization. So that's pretty impressive. The NWA does not have that topped. Willie Bowen says, the Tyrus joke of the week is Tyrus is scared of one lady, Jenny Craig. Yeah, I've actually heard that Tyrus has lost weight, but I don't watch the channel that Tyrus is on, so I have no idea if that's the case or not. Wow, we actually went over our time this week, but I hope you guys didn't mind too much. Pat Patrick Moore said, I was wondering because according to Dustin Starr, when he'd book someone, he'd be responsible for the travel expense. So I look, I've never promoted a wrestling event. I can't tell you honestly any of that stuff. What I have heard specifically from some of the talent that used to be, especially let's go to the NWA World Champion 10 years ago. NWA World Champion in 2015. That wrestler would have a guarantee as NWA World Champion. So that wrestler would be paid a dollar amount that was agreed upon by the NWA. When they became champion, there was a set figure for every date for every NWA promotion. That wrestler would be paid this amount of money. That was part of the benefit of being World's Heavyweight Champion. And it wasn't a crazy amount, less than $500. And maybe that might sound like a lot of money, but when you're talking about pro wrestling, $500 isn't that much. However, travel was not included with that. So if your wrestler was from San Diego, California, and you wanted him to wrestle in Brownsville, Texas, then you paid to have him on your show. So you had to pay his what it would cost to book him, plus the expense of getting him and his hotel. Now, you're not paying for his food, but yeah, you would have to pay for travel. But that's not the case for every wrestling promotion. And, living in Southern California and seeing the United Wrestling Network booking talent from Las Vegas and booking talent from Northern California and booking talent from Arizona, what I do know is those guys all pack into a car and drive. And some of them even go home that night after the show. They don't stay in the city that they're booked. They drive home, whether it be a 6-hour drive to Arizona, a 4-hour drive to Las Vegas, an 8-hour drive to Sacramento, or some guys, a 3-hour drive down to TJ. Like, yeah, I've seen it. So it's not crazy. But, certain talent is worth paying the extra money for. And I think most independent promotions, when you are booking talent, if you're flying people in from out of state, yeah, I think you incur the charge that it costs to use that talent. I wish our friends from Dog were still in the chat because I know that they use talent from out of state all the time. A lot of times what they'll do too is they'll work with promotions in nearby cities or nearby states and say, hey, if we're going to bring him in, do you want to help pay for some of the cost, or her and whoever it is? Do you want to book them as well on your show the next night or the night before, and we can share the expense of bringing them into town? That's not unheard of either. And sometimes a wrestling promotion will work with an autograph company or, a memorabilia company to bring in a talent and offset some of those company, the wrestling store, pay for some of the accommodations as well to offset the cost. Plus, it gives the talent another payday. Malcolm, what is going on? Thanks for hanging out. You came in just about the end of the show, but appreciate you jumping in here. And I do appreciate you, Foxy, for running keeping the comments and the chat flowing over there on TikTok. I appreciate that. That's awesome. But we're going to wrap it up today. And I first and foremost, I want to say thank you guys for hanging out this week. This was such a fun show. And you guys always, I feel like you bring out the best in me. It fires me up, and I do appreciate that. So thank you for all of that. And this Thursday might be the last Alliance Guys live stream of the year because we're getting to the holiday season. Your boy Jay's going to go get a tattoo on next Thursday. So this might be it for me this year. We'll keep you guys posted, but I will be back next Tuesday for sure to do the pre-party right here on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, Kick, and everywhere else. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being a part of the show, and we'll see you at the matches. Good night now.
Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.
Good night, everyone.